Okay.
Jason Eisman here with Clay Shirky, NYU professor, coming off the presentation this morning talking about algorithmic authority. And I was wondering if you could just expand on that a little bit, the idea of people trusting the algorithm.
Right. Well, the idea of algorithmic authority is people need to know, for a certain class of information, they need to know that they can trust it before they're willing to go and look at it and use it. And that building up trust famously takes time. But we're now in a world where people visibly trust things that are information that's assembled not by professional editors and fact checkers, but assembled algorithmically. Easily the most famous and most widely used example of this is Google search, where Google simply reads the link structure. It's actually not simple, but Google reads the link structure, combines it with a bunch of other metadata, and says, based on what we know so far, we think this ranking of the potential sources for the information you're looking for is about the one that will match what it is you want. And people trust that. People now trust Google to do that work. In the news business, the interesting model is Wikipedia, which has adopted a model of authority which is radical post hoc peer review. And again, people visibly trust Wikipedia. Its audience is not only 330 billion people so far, but it is often the top-ranked site for news stories of the day, particularly if they're large stories of global significance. And the Google Wikipedia complex was part of the way that those things happened, because when people had come to trust Google, and other people were pointing to Wikipedia with their links, Wikipedia started to crawl up search results. So people tried it and found it to be valuable, and they tried it some more and linked to it some more. And this feedback loop has now created this sense of algorithmic authority, which is to say, people trusting these sources of information without needing to know what's the institutional model behind them. There's a lot of argumentation about whether that they should trust algorithmic authority, but in a way that conversation obscures the fact that they are trusting algorithmic authority. And I think the interesting research question is why. What is it people think that they're trusting when they trust Google search results, when they trust Wikipedia search results, when they trust links recommended to them by Twitter, etc.?
Do you think that model has a long-term viability for people wanting to either start up news, let's say news aggregation services, or deliver news to people? Is that a viable model for that?
It's certainly a viable model for any large-scale filtering problem. As I have often said, there's no such thing as information overload, it's filter failure, right? From the minute we had more books to read than the average literate person could read in a lifetime, which, depending on the region you're talking about, happened someplace between the 16th and 19th century. From that moment on, we've always had information overload. That's the modern condition. What's happening, I think, to our sense that we're suffering acutely from information overload now is that the old professional filters are broken. They're simply not adequate to contain a world in which anyone can put material out in the public. And so in a way we have to proxy some of the work to machines. Just as with printing we proxied some of the productive work to machines, now we have to proxy some of the filtering work to machines. And so the use of an algorithm is a way of chewing through an enormous amount of raw material and producing something of value. So not only do I think it is a viable model, I think it's going to be one of the principal models we see for new news organizations to find ways of linking up amateur participation and professional judgment with algorithmic assembly of lots of different component parts in the manner of Google, in the manner of TwitScoop, in the manner of these other kind of meme tracking or database combining models, because with this much data around, we have to have something computational to help.
Great, thank you very much.
Right, sure.